All right, in this video we're going to be factoring trinomials. Basically what that means is we're going to be doing the FOIL process backwards. So we're unfoiling these. So to warm up, we're going to FOIL and then we will factor the trinomials. So number one here, of course, FOIL is first times first, and we get x squared. Then we get the first times the outside there, which would be 5x. And then we do 1 times x and 1 times 5. This was just what was like on our quiz the other day. Then we put together our like terms. 1 and 5 make 6. So it's x squared plus 6x plus 5. Now the strategy, or not the strategy, but I'm going to say, pause the video and you try the next two and we'll match up to see. Then right here it says trinomials like these can be factored back into the product of binomials. So we're just going to go from here back over here. So this is standard form, right? And then this is factored form. And we should be comfortable going in each direction on these. So go ahead and try the next two. All right, I'm back. Let's go ahead and see if you did these correctly. Hey, this one was just like the one that was on the quiz. Exactly the same as the one that was on the quiz, except for there were x's right there. So we got m times m squared, m times the 6, negative 4 times the m, and negative 4 times the 6. Then we put together the like terms. So we get m squared plus 2m minus 24. And the reason why we want to be able to do this is because we want to be able to solve quadratics. So what's going to happen in the near future is you're going to set the quadratic will be set equal to 0, and you have to solve it by factoring and breaking it up into two parts. So that's to come in the near future. And the last one, k times k squared, k times the negative 3. And then the 7 times the k, and the 7 times the 3. It's a negative times a negative, so it's 21. Put these together, k squared minus 10k, because you borrow 3 from the uncle and 7 from the aunt, so you owe them 10, plus 21. Now, we're going to notice a pattern here. When there's the signs are the same, right? So it's plus and plus. Then over here, it's plus and plus. When the signs are the same and it's negative and negative, it always makes a positive in the back because you multiply two negatives together. And then when you add the two negatives together, it makes a minus in the middle. So when the signs are the same, it's going to be positive in the back and either negative based on two negatives or two positives. Now when it's one of each sign, then it is going to be negative or positive, or actually negative in the back and then positive or negative in here, depending upon which number is bigger or smaller. But you'll see examples of that. So the next part here says to factor a trinomial of the form ax squared plus bx plus c, you must find two integers that multiply to make c and add or subtract to make b. So you multiply to get the c, and you're going to be adding and subtracting to get the b in the middle. So see how I multiplied 1 and 5 to get the 5 in the back, but I added 1 and 5 to get the 6 in the middle. So here's an example. It says, what two integers have the product of 12 and a sum of 7? So we think about 12. Well, what's 12 made up of? It's 1 times 12. Does that add up to 7? No. 2 times 6. Does that add up to 7? No. 3 times 4. Does that add up to 7? Because those are the different ways to make 12. Aha! 3 and 4. So it's 3 and 4. So write the two binomials. Write two binomials using integers, and then check check by distributing. So here we go. X squared plus 7x plus 12. So we go parenthesis, 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 x and x. So we know that x times x makes the x squared. We have to add or subtract to make the middle, and multiply to make the 12 on the end. So we already picked it out. It's 3 and 4, and positive and positive. So 3 times 4 makes 12. There's 3x, right? And then 4x makes 7x. So there's the answer. All right, moving down here to set 1. Set 1 is all the same because everything's positive. So when everything's positive, all my answers are going to be positive. All right, so plus and plus is going to factor into a plus in the middle here and a plus in the middle there. So when you have plus plus, right, it's going to factor into plus and plus. So all I have to do really worry about here is do n times n, and then 20. What is 20? Well, 20 is 1 times 10, not 1 times 10, 2 times 10. Does 2 and 10 make 9? No. It's 1 times 20? No. Is it 4 times 5? Oh yeah, 4 and 5. 4 and 5 make 20 and add to make 9. So plus 4 and plus 5. And then this one, and that one are all the same. So we'll just go through that one. Actually, go ahead, you try 3 right now, and then we'll go through it. All right, so let's see what you came up with for an answer. 2 sets of parentheses, put in a in each. So then 24, how do we make 24? Well, that yellow paper that I gave you with the multiplication tables on there helps us with that, because it's 1 times 24, 2 times 12, right? 3 times 8, none of those make 10. 4 times, 4 and 6. So 4, 6, plus, and plus. All right, set 2 has a negative in the back. When it has a negative in the back, it's going to be one of each sign. So when it's plus and minus, it's going to be one of each. That's an A, one of each sign. Okay, so when it's a plus and minus, it's going to be one of each sign. Now when it's two positives, it's always going to be plus plus. All right, so it makes a difference how we pick these numbers out here, because now we're actually going to, instead of adding the two numbers together to get 9, we're going to have to compare the two numbers by subtracting the two numbers to get something smaller. So here we go, parentheses n and n, and then 18. 1 times 18. Well, if I subtract those or add them, I don't get 3, right? 2 times 9 makes 18. Nope. 3 times 6. Aha, 3 and 6. So 6 and 3. And you can put it 3, 6, 6, 3. It doesn't matter. Now what you have to do is the larger number has to get the sign from the middle. So the larger number has to get the sign from the middle, because it has to be 6 minus 3. 6 minus 3 would be positive 3. So if you think about the middle terms here, we're using FOIL to check our work. This and this would be 6n, right? And that would be negative 3n, and 6 minus 3 is definitely 3. So this is the answer right there. All right, you try the next one. And here we go. G and G, and 3 and 2. 3 and 2 differ by 1, so and 3 times 2 makes the 6. Remember, we're multiplying to make the last number, adding and subtracting to make the middle number, positive and minus. Now we have two negatives, so when we have a minus and a minus, it's always going to be one of each sign as well. Okay, so when there's a minus minus, it's going to be one of each sign as well. So here we go, A and A, and then there's only one way to make 3, and that's 3 and 1. It's 3 is a prime number, that's your friend. So now the larger number has to be negative, and the smaller number has to be positive, because it has to be negative 3, right, plus 1. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. All right, you try 11. So I'll help you set it up here. Okay, so you're multiplying to make 63, and you have to subtract the two numbers to make negative 2 in the middle. So after not too much time, you should see that it's 9 and 7, negative and positive. The next set of numbers is minus and plus. So when it's minus and plus, it's always going to set up into minus and minus, because you multiply two negatives together to get a positive, and you add two negatives together and you get a bigger negative number. So 24 is 3 times 8. 3 times 8 makes 24, and 3 and 8 make 11. So 3 and 8. Now we have to add up the two negative numbers. So a negative and a negative make a bigger negative number, and then a negative times a negative is positive. So that's how that one factors. All right. So here's the next one, 15. You try that one. And I'm back. Y and Y. 8 times 9. 8 times 9 is 72, because 9 times 9 is 81. So it's 8 times 9. And if you add those together, that is 17. So minus 9 and minus 8. And the negative times the negative is a positive 72, and you add two negatives together and you get a bigger negative number. All right, now this is mixed practice down here. So there's the 4 different types. When you have two positives, it's two positives. When you have a positive and a negative, it's one of each sign. You have to pay attention. When it's negative, negative to start out with, it's one of each sign. And when it's negative, positive, it's two negatives. So now this is all mixed up here. So you can try and do those different ones. What's a good one to do? How about this one? So we got in and in, and then you have to think about what makes 30. What makes 30? 1 times 30. Will that create a negative 1 in the middle? Nope. 2 times 15. Will that create a negative 1 in the middle? Nope. 3 times 10 is 30, and that will not make a negative 1 in the middle. 4 doesn't divide in there. Oh, but 5 does. Oh, 5 times 6. 5 and 6 differ by 1. So we go 5 and 6. And who needs to be negative? Well, if I add them together, I get 11. But I need the 6 to be negative. So it'd be negative 6 plus 5. So 5n minus 6n. You see it happening right here? This would be 5n, right? And then this right here would be negative 6n. 5 minus 6 is negative 1. So the answer, that's an n. So the answer is right here. That's the answer. All right. Now we're going to do the taking out the greatest common factor. Greatest common factor. Oh, I should tell my story right here. I always use this method here of checking. So let me write this out in white space. So this last problem here, I checked my work. So it's n plus 5, and then n minus 6. So you want to check your work to make sure that this is the correct answer up here. So you don't really need to check that this times this is negative 30, because you already picked it out. This times this makes the n squared, but you want to check the middle to see that it's negative 1. So you go like this, and that's 5n, and you go like this, right? And this is negative 6n. And I call this the Officer Bell half donut trick. So do you see the half of the donut right there? And we call it the Officer Bell half donut trick because where is the other half of the donut? Well, it's in Officer Bell's stomach, right? Anyway, so if we put the negative 6 and the 5 together, we do get negative 1. Okay, so down here we have our take out the common factor. So this is important. Why we did yesterday's lesson is that this makes these a lot simpler to factor. So we look here, we're like 3. I don't want to factor a 3 there because that's too complicated. But oh, look, 3 lives in each side of each one of these. So I can have 3. And then I get y squared minus 5y plus 4. So 3 times this makes this, 3 times this makes this, 3 times that makes that. And then this is a lot easier to factor. So then I drop the 3 down, I make my 2 sets of parentheses, and I get y and y. And then I have to make 4 and 5, so 1 times 4. Remember, this is a minus plus, so if it's minus plus, it's 2 negatives, right? And we're going to have minus 1 and minus 4. So there's the answer completely factored. Ta-da! All right, so what we're doing here is we are starting off with the concept of FOIL, first outside, inside, last, and you simplify it together and you get a quadratic in standard form. Then we talked about taking the quadratic in standard form and breaking it up into 2 factors, and that's the process of factoring the trinomial.